Hi, I'm Russell Sturgis. I'm the founder and principal of EAP Mentor. Welcome to the 7th post in the blog series that I've been doing on the 8 principles of love. The 8 principles of love is an explanation for the philosophical foundation to the Enhancers Awareness Program. And as you will have already established, having watched the earlier videos, what sits at the foundation of the Enhancers Awareness Program are the beatitudes from the Sermon on the Mount. In this post today, I'm going to be looking at the 6th beatitude, which are blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. And this comes off the back of the one that we discussed last time that looked at blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. And just briefly recapping, this whole idea of being merciful was this idea of having become fully aligned with the works of mercy, both the physical and spiritual works of mercy. And so we'd already talked about in the 4th beatitude, hunger and thirst after righteousness, which was about helping those in need, feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, visiting the sick, etc. Then in the spiritual works of mercy, which were discussed in being merciful, we were looking at things like loving your enemies and praying for those who falsely accuse you and persecute you, and doing good to those that hurt you, and you know, turning the other cheek, going the extra mile, not judging. These were the spiritual works of mercy. So what we've been talking about so far is this whole idea of choosing a way of turning up in the world that sees you less focused on the things that are typically part of the world of illusion, as we refer to it, and much more associated with becoming more aligned with the kingdom of heaven. And of course, with the world of illusion, we talked about the whole idea that what we desire there is wealth, power, love, and fame. And of course, the offspin of that is what are called the cardinal sins. And so what ends up happening is in being caught up in these things, the 7 cardinal sins include the whole notion of pride, wrath, greed, envy, lust, gluttony. What's the other one? Sloth. So what we've got is a way of turning up in the world that no longer represents what's important to us. And if you recall, and I'll just touch on this briefly, is that I said that once we start making this shift to being aligned with a more mindful way of living, and have a greater commitment to awareness, and I write about this in the written part of the blog, is that when we start to be more committed to gathering more knowledge and understanding, what happens is we start to rise above ignorance and avoidance, which are things that stop us from being mindful. And of course, as we see the application of that knowledge and understanding, which is wisdom, that has us move beyond attachment. Our attachment is where we want to change, but we find ourselves reverting back to our old behaviours. So, and then the other things that we would be spending our time and energy on is maintaining a sense of reverence in our life, or piety, this sense of having courage and faith, the ability to listen more intently to the still small voice, and spending more time in awe of that which is beautiful and profound. And so all of a sudden, where we direct our energies are very different. Now, this is a precursor to this 6th beatitude, which is blessed are the pure in heart. So what we learnt, that the state of the heart is effectively indicative of what it is that we prioritise, what we think is most important. And so by this particular point, the treasures of the heart are no longer focused on the things of the illusionary world, and they're no longer on your radar at this point. And this is quite significant in terms of the etymology of the word pure. So it's about the whole notion, back in the 1300s, the word pure literally meant to be unmixed. And so what we have is this whole idea that there isn't a mixture of what it is that we desire. So we're not confusing or mixing the passion for things of the world, love, wealth, fame and power, with the spiritual values that we've talked about. So if we go back even to the 12th century, the French word pur was about being alloyed. So an alloy is where things are mixed together, and there's no mixture, it's unalloyed. And this also, when we look at the Latin, it's unmixed, it's undefiled. So pure is this whole sense that the state of the heart at this point no longer has any investment. And this is really quite a definitive point in the spiritual journey, in the spiritual transformation. In some quarters, some would even go so far as to say that that this is the pure love of Christ, and so it's sort of, some would say that this is the point at which you've developed Christ consciousness, or from a Buddhist perspective it'd be Buddha consciousness. So it's this consciousness now that is undefiled by the things of the world. It's this point where you live in the world but are no longer of the world. And so what we have is this particular situation where the way in which you are turning up is that the heart is purely oriented towards the works of mercy, all the things that we've talked about there, all the gifts of the Spirit that we talked about, all of those things become the things that are most important to you. There's a saying in the scriptures that says, "By their fruits you shall know them," and that's relative in any aspect of life. But I thought it was really worthwhile pointing out that it was clearly stated what the evidence was if somebody was pure in heart, and the sorts of attributes in terms of focus that would turn up in people is that they would be focused, or that they would naturally express love. So this whole idea that kindness would be intrinsic to who they are. They would be experiencing life with a sense of joy, that you could feel peace in their presence, that they tended to demonstrate being long-suffering, that their approach to the way that they related to other people and to nature was with gentleness, that they represented in how they turned up in the world as having goodness. They obviously demonstrated a faith, which I see faith sort of brings along with it courage and devotion to and I'm going to use the word God. I don't want to offend anybody, but this whole notion that there's a divine consciousness. They turn up with meekness, so they're teachable, and they have temperance, so they bring balance to what's self-loving in terms of what's really serving for their well-being physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So what we have is that love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, and temperance are all sorts of fruits that would be evident of somebody who's now moved into this place of living with purity of heart. And in the last blog, I talked about the fact that that really what this was all about was turning up and being a light in the world. And I think that it's really important that that we understand the distinction here, and that is that this isn't about going out and rescuing and saving people. This isn't about going out and fixing anything. Now, obviously, there's things that we do by virtue of the works of mercy, but ultimately, what happens in this is that you become a light to the world. And what happens is that by virtue of how you turn up, people see your good works. So people get to see who you are. I can remember many years ago seeing a little poem that said, I would rather see a sermon than hear one any day. I would rather one would walk with me and clearly show the way. And this is really what happens. And to me, this is the ultimate expression of pure love, or charity as it's sometimes referred to. This is the ultimate love, is that you are prepared to turn up an example to the world what it is to live with these higher values, these spiritual values that are completely detached from the things of the world. In Greek language, there's different types of love. Philia is the love that we have, which is brotherly love, and that's really the works of mercy that we're talking about. Philiatia, which is this whole idea of self-love, which this isn't about egocentricity. This is about the love of self that brings about temperance, for example, in terms of the way in which you eat and treat your body and align with the senses of your body. And then there's agape, which is this is the pure love of Christ. And this is the one that basically says, I turn up in pure love of myself and humanity by literally living my life in a way that represents these concepts and these principles of love-centered consciousness. And another word for that could be Christ-centered consciousness. And so this is the capacity to turn up and be in the world, but not of the world. And so this particular capacity to live your life in this way and to make the transition from how we live it being of the world and trying to move into the place of being in the world requires us to have an enhanced sense of an awareness and a capacity to actively be mindful in everything that we do. And so the whole purpose of the Enhancers Awareness Program, just by virtue of its name, is to help you develop this greater capacity to develop awareness, which is about having choice. And then the whole last section, and we have 3 sections in our program, which is the Being Mindful unit, is really about having you become much more capable of adopting mindfulness as a way of life, as something that you turn up and do, and that becomes the thing that you're committed to, and which allows you to adopt this level of turning up with love and kindness in a sustainable way. And so it's absolutely necessary. And of course, I talk about this in the written blog, where in the Christian scripture, Jesus said, if you can see with your eyes and hear with your ears, which is developing awareness, and understand with your heart, which from my perspective is really about becoming much more mindful, he says, I will heal you. And I think that that's what you will see, is that there's a healing, that there's a transformation, and that people who have developed this level of awareness and mindfulness literally shine a light that impacts on people around them, and people see it, and it inspires people. It helps them to be motivated to want to adopt a different quality of life. Anyway, I hope that you're finding this series of interest, and that we're helping you have a greater appreciation of the profundity of the Enhancers Awareness Program. If you'd like to find out more, please go to our website, eapmentor.com.au, and please go to our Facebook page and subscribe to it. We have regular things that are being posted on there about ways for practicing being more aware and being more mindful. And please tell your friends about this, because we know right now that there's a lot of people who are really struggling. Coronavirus has created a lot of worry and fear for people. And the beautiful thing about living with awareness and mindfulness and being much more love-centered is that you find yourself being much more removed from a life that's filled with worry and stress. So please, anyone that you know that's dealing with that stuff, tell them about what it is that we're doing. Thanks for reading the blog and the post and listening. And in our next post, I'll be looking at the 7th beatitude, which is blessed are the peacemakers. And hope you're enjoying the series. Speak to you then. Bye.